A very good afternoon to you all. Today we will discuss about the DNA sequencing methods. So as we all know, the advance or the technological advances in the area of the science has a significant effect with special reference to research. So the new protocols and any new laboratory procedures that was difficult to implement, that means formerly when it was difficult to implement, now it has become easier to perform. So the very essence of molecular biotechnology is rooted in a wide range of technical developments, and many of which have become a commonplace, and it is accessible to both for the large research facility as well as the small research facilities. Say, for example, now it is a golden standard to chemically synthesize a DNA molecule, sequence a DNA molecule, amplify yet another DNA molecule with a simple technology that we discussed in the last session, the polymerase chain reaction, or maybe even to identify a specific protein or a protein fragment with a monoclonal antibody. So each of these procedures or methodology is derived from information that is being generated by basic studies of the characteristics of the DNA, DNA replication, and molecular cell biology. So in addition to these experimental methods, the methodologies have become an integral components of molecular cloning studies, which are specifically designed to isolate, characterize, manipulate, and also transfer specific DNA fragments. So with this prelude, we'll try to understand the chemical synthesis of the DNA. So the ability to chemically synthesize a strand of DNA with a specific sequence, that means sequence specificity should be maintained, that is a specific sequence of nucleotides is easily, inexpensively, and rapidly has contributed significantly to the methodologies of molecular cloning and DNA characterization. So these sequences, which are readily available chemically synthesized single stranded DNA oligonucleotides, so they may be used to assemble the whole genes or most frequently gene fragments, or to amplify specific DNA fragments, or to introduce specific mutations into isolated DNAs, or maybe as DNA hybridization probes, or even as adjuncts to gene sequencing, or as linkers to facilitate gene cloning. So we have a broader range of applications for the synthesized DNA. They may be used to assemble whole genes or amplify specific DNA fragments, introduce specific mutations, or as hybridization probes, or maybe as adjuncts to gene sequencing, or even maybe as linkers to facilitate gene cloning. So the machines that automate the chemical reactions involved in DNA synthesis, that is, we call it as call these machines as DNA synthesizers or the gene machines. So they have made possible the synthesis of single stranded oligonucleotides, probably less than or equal to 50 nucleotides, into a more or less routine procedure. So generally these DNA synthesizers, they consist of a set of valves and pumps that are programmed to introduce in the correct order the specified nucleotides. So the specified nucleotides are pumped into the system, that is into the column, and this is programmed, and they are pumped in the correct order, and then the reagents required for the coupling of each consecutive nucleotide to the growing chain. So these synthesizers or gene machines, they take care of pumping the specified nucleotides in the correct order and then coupling the consecutive nucleotides to the growing chain. So what is most important to be remembered is chemical DNA synthesis, it does not follow the biological direction of DNA synthesis. Rather, in the chemical DNA synthesis process, each incoming nucleotide is coupled to the 5' hydroxyl terminus of the growing chain. It is as simple as that. So 5' hydroxyl terminal of the growing chain should be free, for the reason that the incoming nucleotide is coupled to this 5' hydroxyl terminal of the growing chain. And all the reactions are carried out in succession in a single reaction column. And both the duration of each reaction and the washing steps are computer controlled. So everything is programmed. So these programs see to it that they introduce the specified nucleotides in the correct order and coupling of the consecutive nucleotide to the growing chain take place. So this is a flow chart for the chemical synthesis of DNA oligonucleotides. Here the linking first nucleotide to the column happens, followed by washing, then detritylation. Detritylation refers to removal of dimethoxytrityl group from the 5' end of the nucleoside, because this 5' end is very important for coupling reaction. And after detritylation, it is followed by washing, then activation and coupling, followed by washing, then capping, oxidation. So following n number of coupling reactions or cycles, n number of cycles, a single stranded piece of DNA, that is n plus 1, now it becomes n plus 1 base, will be synthesized. Right. Currently we have the phosphoramidite method, which is a procedure of choice, and in this, prior to the introduction into the reaction column, or before we start the reaction, the amino groups of the bases, that is adenine, guanine and cytosine. So they are derivatized by the addition of benzoyl, isobutyryl and benzoyl groups respectively. Why it is done? To prevent undesirable side reactions during chain growth. So these amino groups of these bases, adenine, guanine and cytosine, they are derivatized so that undesirable side reactions during the chain growth is prevented. The thymine base is not treated for simple reason, it lacks an amino group. The solid phase synthesis, that is the attachment of the growing DNA strand to a solid support, that is solid phase synthesis. So that is used so that all the reactions can be conducted in one reaction column or the vessel. And the reactions or the reaction step which involves washing can be done in one step, and if there are any excess reagents, they can be easily reused if we carry out the reaction in a single vessel or column. So that is the reason why a solid support is used, which is usually a pore glass bead, or that is, we call it as CPG bead, that is controlled pore glass bead. So this flow chart is a multi-step synthesis flow chart for DNA oligonucleotides. The initial nucleoside, that is base and sugar, is attached to an inert solid support. So as I said, it is called as CPG, that is controlled pore glass beads. So these glass beads, they are the beads with uniform sized pores. So what happens during the reaction? The first nucleoside, which will be the 3' terminal nucleotide of the synthesized strand, is attached to a spacer molecule by its 3' terminus, and the spacer molecule is covalently attached to the support material. As you can see in the figure, we have the CPG bead and then a spacer molecule. So if you carefully observe, the first nucleoside, which will be the 3' terminal nucleotide of the synthesized strand, so we start from 3' to 5'. So this is attached to a spacer molecule via its 3' terminus, and in turn this spacer molecule is covalently attached to the support material. Here the support material is a controlled pore glass bead, because the pore size is uniform, it is controlled, it can be controlled. Now what happens? Now the DMT, that is, if you look at the 5' position, we have the DMT. DMT refers to dimethoxytrityl group. So a DMT is attached or has been attached to the 5' terminus of the initial nucleoside. We call this as base 1, to prevent the 5' hydroxyl group from reacting non-specifically, as I said earlier, prior to the addition of second nucleotide. Got it? We have the first base. Now this first base will be the 3' terminal nucleotide of the synthesized or the strand that is being synthesized, and this base is attached to a solid support, that is CpG bead, through a spacer molecule via the 3' terminus of the first base. Now in the 5' terminus we have a DMT group, that is dimethoxytrityl group. So this is attached to the 5' terminus of the nucleoside. The reason for that is to prevent the 5' hydroxyl group from reacting non-specifically before adding the second nucleotide. Right. So each nucleotide that has to be, or that is to be added to the growing chain, it has a 5' DMT group and a diisopropylamine group attached to a 3' phosphite group. So if you just carefully look at the structure of a phosphoramidite, it contains a nucleoside and a DMT group in the 5' position, then a diisopropylamine group attached to the 3' phosphite group. So which by itself is protected by a methyl residue, and this whole molecular configuration is called as phosphoramidite. So this method of chemical DNA synthesis is called as phosphoramidite chemical DNA synthesis method. So after the first nucleoside is attached to the CpG beads, the cycle begins. First, the reaction column is washed extensively with an anhydrous reagent, say for example the acetonitrile, to remove water, because we don't want any side reactions, unwanted side reactions, to remove water and any nucleophiles that may be present. So the column is extensively washed with an anhydrous reagent. Usually acetonitrile is used to remove water and any nucleophiles that may be present. Now the column is flushed with argon to purge the acetonitrile. So you have washed the column with acetonitrile. Now acetonitrile has to be removed. So purge the column with argon to remove the acetonitrile. Next, the 5' DNT group is removed. That is what we call it as detritylation from the attached nucleoside by treatment with TCA. So how to remove this DMT? So you treat the nucleoside with TCA. So once you remove the DMT from the 5' group, you will get a reactive 5' hydroxyl group. So if you carefully see the figure, you will understand that is the detritylation step, which yields a reactive 5' hydroxyl group. Now the reaction column is washed again with acetonitrile to remove the TCA. So acetonitrile is used again. So how to remove the acetonitrile? Then it is again purged with argon. to flush out the acetonitrite. Now, the software takes care of introducing the next specified or prescribed base, that is, we call it as phosphoramidite, because the method by itself is phosphoramidite chemical DNA synthesis method. And what phosphoramidite refers to, I have shown. And tetrazole simultaneously, that is for the purpose of activation and coupling. So the tetrazole activation, or the tetrazole activates the phosphoramidite so that its 3' phosphite forms a covalent bond with the 5' hydroxyl group of the initial nucleoside. So any unincorporated phosphoramidite and tetrazole, they are removed by flushing with argon. Right. So the tetrazole activates the phosphoramidite so that its 3' phosphite forms a covalent bond with the 5' hydroxyl group of the initial, that is first nucleoside. And if there are any unincorporated phosphoramidite and tetrazole, they are removed by flushing with argon. And because not all the support bound nucleosides are linked to phosphoramidite during the first coupling reaction, the unlinked residues must be prevented from linking to the next nucleotide during the following or the next cycle. So to do that, acetic anhydride and dimethylaminopiridine, they are added to acetylate the unreacted 5' hydroxyl groups. Right. So if this step, that is, if this capping step, we call this step as capping step, if it is not carried out, then after a number of cycles, the growing chains will differ in both length and nucleotide sequence, which is not desired. So at this stage of the process, the internucleotide linkage is in the form of a phosphite triester bond, which is unstable, and since it is unstable, it is prone to break in the presence of either acid or even the base. So what we have to do is, the phosphite triester is, or it should be oxidized with an iodine mixture to form a more stable pentavalent phosphate triester. That is oxidation step. So after this oxidation step and subsequent wash of the reaction column, the cycle of detritylation, phosphoramidite activation, coupling, capping and oxidation is repeated. So if you just recall the first figure, the flow chart, detritylation, phosphoramidite activation, coupling, capping and oxidation is repeated for n+1 cycles. So this cycling reaction continues with each successive phosphoramidite until the last residue, which is programmed, has been added to the growing chain. So when the final cycle is completed, the newly synthesized DNA strands, which are bound to the CpG beads, so the synthesis is happening, but still it is attached or bound to the CpG beads. So each phosphate triester contains a methyl group Every guanine, cytosine and adenine carries its amino protecting group, and the 5' terminus of the last nucleotide has a DMT group. So this is the overall picture of the final strand or the newly synthesized DNA strand. Now we have to remove some of these groups. The methyl groups are removed by a chemical treatment in the reaction column itself. The DNA strands, they are cleaved from the spacer molecule. When you cleave the spacer molecule, because the spacer molecule is attached to the 3' terminus, so when you cleave the spacer molecule, it leaves 3' hydroxyl terminus free. The DNA is eluted from the reaction column, and then in succession the benzoyl and isobutyryl groups, they are stripped away, which were used to protect the amino group of the bases, and the DNA is detritylated. When you remove the DMT group, the 5' terminus of the DNA strand is phosphorylated either by the enzyme T4 polynucleotide kinase and ATP or by some chemical procedures. So this reaction can be carried out after detritylation while the oligonucleotide is still bound to the support. Right? To achieve a reasonable yield, because yield is an important factor when we synthesize a molecule. Here the main step is coupling. So we refer the process of yield to the efficiency of coupling. So to achieve a reasonable yield or overall yield, the coupling efficiency should be greater than 98% at each step, whether the step is activation or capping or oxidation, whatever it is. The coupling efficiency should be greater than 98% at each step and at each cycle. So the coupling efficiency of each cycle can be determined by spectrophotometer in an indirect way by monitoring the amount of trityl groups that has been released. So how many trityl groups are released? So that gives an indication how many molecules have been coupled. So that is an indirect way of measuring the coupling or the coupling efficiency. Right? So for example, the efficiency is 99% at each cycle. So this table gives you an idea about the yield of chemically synthesized oligonucleotides with various coupling efficiencies at each cycle. So first column you see the coupling efficiency, which is given in percentage, and then the yield of oligonucleotides, which is also in percentage with varying length, that is starting from 20 mer to 100 mer. So for example, if the coupling efficiency is 99% at each cycle in the production of say 20 mer, then 82% of the product will be 20 nucleotides long. So if you can carefully go through the table, you will understand. So the overall yield of the oligonucleotides will be 82%. Similarly, if a 60 mer is synthesized with 99% efficiency at each cycle, then about 55% of the final product will contain 60 nucleotides. Right? So when the average coupling efficiency is less than 98%, then the length of the final oligonucleotides can be obtained is usually it is useful amount, but it is often limited. Right? So the coupling efficiency is very important from or to calculate the overall yield of the DNA that is being synthesized. So I'll stop my discussion over here. We can continue our discussion on DNA synthesis in the next session. Thank you very much.